So what connects this lady here
Welcome to living in the fifth dimension.
to this flat earther here?
So science itself has never proven gravity as a force itself. What is proven is 9.8 meters per second squared is the near constant rate of acceleration towards the Earth all over the Earth.
And also to this chemtrail believer here.
Number one cause of dementias are aluminium.
And aluminium's in the chemtrails.
Yeah.
And what made me get in my car and drive all the way to this community centre in Stockport, Manchester? Well, the answer is as fascinating as it is disturbing, and it all starts with this lady here.
My name is Ladan Universal.
Well, that's her internet name. Her real name is Ladan Ratcliffe, which has been in the news quite a lot lately, and Ladan is not afraid to ask the big questions, like this.
So what is the fifth dimension?
Or this.
What are the signs and symptoms of living in the fifth dimension?
Or even this.
And what happens if I am in the fifth dimension and I can see that my loved ones are still operating from the third dimension? Does this mean I have to leave them behind?
Now those are incredibly important questions for sure, but they're not the questions we're going to be looking at in this video. You see, recently, following a month-long undercover operation by a journalist from the Times newspaper, it was alleged that Ladan was operating an illegal conspiracy school. A school in which children were allegedly being prepared so they could cope with the Great Reset when it came. Ladan hit back at these claims, calling them factually incorrect and defamatory. She said that Universal Kids, the name of the education provision, was not in fact a school. And this is important because in England, if you are a school, you are open to regulation and monitoring by the government via Ofsted. And this is something, it seems, that Ladan was very much opposed to.
Have you had much trouble with Ofsted here?
No. I've just told them we're not doing things that Ofsted would want.
And she might be correct. Universal Kids might not be a school. You see, to be a school in England, you must have at least 5 students in full-time education. This wording is quite sloppy, and an educational institution could even have 20, 30, 40 children on roll, but only maybe 3.5, 4 days a week, and that would not make them full-time. And quite legally, you could declare yourself as not being a school. Here's what Tom Ball, the Undercover Times journalist who worked at Universal Kids for a month, had to say about it.
Outwardly does not describe itself as a school, but to its parents who send their kids there, to prospective parents, to teachers, it does describe itself as a school, and it would like to think of itself as a school, I would say.
So before we look at some of the allegedly batshit crazy things that were being taught at Universal Kids, let's answer that question. Do Universal Kids like to market themselves as a school? Now, the first place you might want to look to find that out is the Universal Kids website. But unfortunately, at some point since this story broke, that website has been taken down for maintenance. But fear not, ladies and gentlemen, because there are plenty of historical versions of that website stored in the Internet Wayback Machine. So let's have a look at what this site used to say. Now, this being a school website, it's obviously got pictures of children on there, so I'm just going to take clips from the website rather than show you the website as a whole. But back in 2021, there was a testimonial on the website from a parent clearly referring to Universal Kids as a school. And Universal Kids had chosen to take this testimony and put it on their own website. But in a version of the website that was cached in April 24, which is a month that this story broke, that testimonial has now been changed and the word school has been removed for a community initiative. Now, this change confuses me somewhat, and it might be down to my own personal ignorance and misunderstanding of what a testimonial is. That might be the reason. But to me, as a parent, looking at a website, I would personally assume that a testimonial in quote marks is a direct quote from a parent. So what's happened here? Have Universal Kids gone back to the same parent and asked for a nearly identical quote with slightly tweaked wording? In which case, given that this is sometime later, why does it still say for nearly 3 weeks in the quote? Or have Universal Kids changed the quote themselves? In which case, should it still really be in quote marks, given the fact that it's not directly from the parent? I don't know the answer to these questions, and perhaps I'm being picky. I just thought I'd raise the point. Anyway, in the About Us section of the school, a parent may get the feeling that Universal Kids is a school when we look at this line here that says every school subject is taught. You might feel that the website is indicating it's a school when it brags about its small class sizes, or when it explains its holistic education. Or perhaps more importantly, you might get the impression that Universal Kids is a school when the head, LeDan Ratcliffe, specifically calls it a school.
For many people are getting to know about our school, although we're on a smaller scale. People are getting to know either through our teachers, our parents, when they advertise in various grids and things like that.
And here she is in an interview in 2021, again using the word school.
And, speaking to many parents, because, quite a lot of parents are now hearing about our school and they love the sound of it.
Not just once.
Our children are now arriving at school and literally running into the classroom.
Not just twice.
The children are working in this self-governed way of schooling where they decide about the rules for the school.
So whether or not it fits the legal definition of a school, after looking at the website and after hearing LeDan speak, I think it's perfectly reasonable for a parent who's thinking about sending their child for this education provision. I think it's perfectly reasonable for them to assume that they are sending their child to a school. Obviously, I'm not aware of the direct personal communications with those parents. Maybe those parents are put straight when they're sending the children to Universal Kids. I don't know. But school or not, these kids were obviously going somewhere and learning some stuff. So let's hear from undercover reporter Tom Ball about what he felt the kids were getting out of it.
These kids weren't learning anything. They spent much of the time being quite sort of nonplussed and perplexed by what they were being taught. And actually, I just came to see it as less of an act of altruism on behalf of their parents and more their parents and these teachers just wanting to live out their convictions and imposing that upon these kids.
Quite damning indeed. In fact, Tom reports that he saw children being taught that their bodies were made up of energy that would ebb and flow according to whether they were lying or telling the truth. He said in one of the school buildings, which was a former nightclub, leaflets were left lying around the hallway stating that COVID-19 vaccines, climate change and 5G were all means by which the government was going to subjugate the population. He claims that he was told he had to teach Chinese medicine, and he was told that he had to tell the kids that humans are made of energy that flows between organs along meridian lines. Now, some of the craziness was caught on camera. For example, the time they brought somebody in to teach the kids that crystals could be used for energy healing.
First, what they could be used for, they could be used to do healing. So any ideas, how do you think they could do healing for people?
Now, as somebody who is a proper teacher, who's taught children science for 20 years, watching this kind of pseudoscientific bullshit really pisses me off.
What happens? A pyramid draws energy from around, around us. It draws energy into the point. So if you put that layers around you can actually, the energy can go into you.
But it is nice to see this little clip here where the kids are obviously not taking him all that seriously.
Put that on your third eye. Close your eyes, tell me if you feel anything or see anything.
I feel a crystal on my forehead.
Get me clever.
Yeah, nice to see him tell the kid there not to be clever, which is quite ironic because I don't think any of those kids are going to leave his class more clever than when they went in. So anyway, Tom Ball managed to get a job at Universal Kids after seeing an advertisement in the Light newspaper, which is described by Wikipedia as being a British far-right conspiracy theory newspaper. Now, the Light newspaper was founded by, you guessed it, Darren Nesbitt, the flat earther on screen right now, and everything about the Light newspaper screams that it is perhaps not the best place to advertise for high quality teachers. Tom goes on to say that at the interview, LeDan told him that she helps parents to remove their children from mainstream education and then encourages the parents to lie to the local authorities by claiming their children are being home educated, while in fact they are paying Universal Kids £30 a day to instruct their children.
She told me that when parents were contacted by the local authorities, as they often are if they're homeschooling, LeDan told the parents not to specifically mention Universal Kids, but just to say that, they're occasionally going to sports clubs or to socialize with their friends, and it wasn't anything kind of formalized, and that was the way that she said that they worked at the side of local authorities, in her words.
Now, as you might expect, Tom does go on to explain that some of the teachers who worked at Universal Kids did have some pretty unconventional beliefs.
The philosophy teacher is a squash coach at the National Squash Centre, and he told me whilst I was there that you could cure cancer by eating apricot kernels.
And of course, we've already met the art teacher who seems to believe that chemtrails are a problem.
You say chemtrails are bad for Alzheimer's, for dementia? Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Number one cause of dementia is aluminium.
And aluminium's in the chemtrails.
Yeah.
And it does seem that the art teacher is aware of things we might not be aware of, such as the incoming forced famine.
They'll know how to find their own medicine, find their own food when the shit hits the fan, because they are going to force a famine on us.
And I've got to tell you, boy, don't I feel foolish for not knowing that famine was incoming. It sounds really, really serious. Apparently, we're going to be eating each other.
And we will be eating each other.
And I don't know how I could have missed this, because apparently there's already talk of that sort of thing going off.
There's already talk of that sort of thing going off.
Now, the good news is Tom did say that there were no lessons that were specifically focused on conspiracy theories like this, but he did say that it was inevitable that from time to time these beliefs would slip out in the lesson. For example, check this out.
We have a bowl of cockroach or tons of carrots.
Well,
Four.
I don't know, I've never eaten a cockroach.
And I never want to.
Well, you might have to.
Might have to.
If Klaus has his way.
Yeah,
Or Gates, Billy.
yeah, they get their way.
That's why we've had celebrities to get me out of here for X amount of years, isn't it? To get us all used to it.
Get everybody used to the idea of eating.
So it doesn't look as mad when it says, right, time to eat cockroach.
Now, that's quite infuriating to listen to, and also quite ironic when you hear other teachers at the school say things like this.
We're bringing up a generation of children that do know the truth.
Anyway, back to LeDanne Radcliffe, the head of the school. And with all the craziness we've just seen, it is easy to forget that LeDanne is a legitimate, bona fide, experienced educator with 20 to 30 years as a teacher under her belt. And her experience really does shine through in interviews where she talks about wanting children to be motivated and engaged and really to be leading their own learning. There's a lot of things she says that as a teacher of 20 years myself that I actually agree with. It's just a shame that we seem to have different standards when it comes to the content that we want children to be learning. Here she is now talking about the curriculum that her school offers.
And with your school, tell the listeners a little bit about the curriculum that you've got in place, because it's quite a comprehensive curriculum, isn't it?
It certainly is. So we teach the fundamental of everything that the children would normally learn at mainstream education. So they have, for example, a variety of science lessons, whether it's chemistry, biology, physics. We have obviously English, we have maths, we have art, dance, drama, and so on. But we do it in a very alternative way.
But this does contradict what Tom Ball said he saw when he was at Universal Kids. He claims that apart from GCSE maths, much of what the kids were learning would be new age stuff like sacred drumming, moon cycles, or homeopathy. So I used the Wayback Machine to look at the curriculum page of the Universal Kids website, and it highlighted 3 areas of learning. We have creative art, where children can learn knitting and cross-stitch. We have a health section, which includes basic first aid and miracles of the human body. And now comes the maths and technology section, where it does appear there are some useful things, for example, money management. But as somebody who teaches maths myself, I'm curious about what sacred geometry means. So I took to Google. And I immediately wished I hadn't, because you guessed it, the first thing I found was a video on sacred geometry by LeDanne Universal. So let's dive into the world of sacred geometry and learn a little bit about it, shall we? Today's lesson, the circle.
Circle means totality. The circle is a symbol of divine energy. It has a feminine touch that embodies compassion, manifestation, and infinity. There is an openness to it, something that brings peace and comfort when we look at it. The rhythm of allness, oneness, expands in a circular motion. rays of love spreading outward from this center, taking countless different forms as individual waves rise into existence, each refracting the light of consciousness. This is when the first circle is birthed.
So I told you at the beginning of the video she wasn't afraid of the big questions, and now we all know where the first circle was birthed. Fucking brilliant. Now, I am not saying that the kids at Universal Kids are being taught that. What I am saying is that on the Universal Kids website, historically, it cited that kids were being taught sacred geometry, and when I've looked at sacred geometry on the internet, that is what I've found. Now, as well as denying that Universal Kids is a school, which, according to the letter of the law, it very probably isn't a school, LaDan did go on to say that she strongly objects to Tom's personal view that Universal Kids was training future conspiracy theorists. She said that the learning experience provided were based on the natural law of the universe and ancient knowledge that has been omitted from mainstream education. So make of that what you will, but it was enough for me to get in the car and drive down to one of the sites at which Universal Kids held its education provision, the community centre in Stockport, and I wanted to see if I could find people to speak to. And I did. I found plenty of people, well, 3, but none of them wanted to appear on camera, unfortunately. The first person I spoke to was very polite, but didn't want to give me any kind of quote or anything I could use, but thank you for your time if you're watching. The second person I met was a nice lady who told me that obviously the local community were well aware, since this story broke, of what was happening at the community centre, and "it's embarrassing" was the quote that I was given. And the third person was a gentleman who lived quite close to the centre, who went at great lengths to tell me that absolutely no illegal school was operating at that community centre whatever, and that at the community centre it was mainly things like band practice and social activities, and he'd never ever heard of any kind of activity of any school whatsoever. He categorically denied it. He told me all of that before he asked me what I was investigating at the community centre, which I found quite interesting. So that's it. Let's see how this story unfolds, and I will keep you informed.